The morning sunlight streamed through the small windows of the bustling cafe. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air, mixing with the chatter of early customers. At a corner table, a young waitress moved with quiet efficiency, balancing trays filled with steaming cups and plates of food. Her name was not known to most regulars, and that was just fine. She preferred it that way. She liked being part of the background, someone people could rely on without really noticing. She wore a simple uniform, nothing fancy, and her hair was tied back in a practical bun. Her movements were precise and graceful, honed by months of experience. She knew how to carry multiple plates, pour drinks without spilling, and remember orders without writing anything down. To anyone watching, she seemed ordinary, just another face in a cafe full of ordinary faces. But inside, there was a quiet spark, a secret that she kept close to her heart. While she worked, her mind wandered to music. She hummed softly as she moved from table to table, letting the rhythm guide her steps. Each movement had a subtle beat, a cadence that only she noticed. Sometimes she would tap the counter lightly with her fingers, making little patterns of sound that went unnoticed by customers but gave her a strange sense of comfort. Music had always been her refuge, a place where she could forget about the endless shifts and the never-ending demands of serving others. Her love for music was not new. As a child, she had spent hours at a small, worn-out piano at home. She had learned to play by ear, memorizing tunes from the radio and mimicking the songs she heard in her head. Her family had never been wealthy, and formal lessons were out of reach, but she had persisted. She practiced in secret, her small fingers dancing across the keys, producing melodies that made her heart swell. Music had become her secret companion, the one thing in the world that made her feel truly alive. Now, working in the cafe, she had little time for practice, but she found ways to keep music alive in her daily routine. When the cafe was quiet, she would sneak into the back room and play a few notes on the old keyboard that the owner had forgotten about. Sometimes she imagined herself on a grand stage, her hands moving effortlessly, the audience captivated by every note. It was a fantasy, but it kept her going, made the long hours bearable. Despite her talent, she kept it hidden. She knew the world saw her as a waitress, and that was how she was expected to be. People rarely looked beyond the uniform, the apron, and the cheerful smile. They didn't suspect that beneath the routine exterior lay a passion that could light up a room. And that was exactly how she liked it. She enjoyed the element of surprise, the idea that one day, if the moment came, she could reveal a side of herself that nobody had ever expected. Customers came and went, some familiar, some new. She greeted each with warmth and attentiveness, making small talk and remembering preferences. She listened to their stories, their complaints, their laughter, all the while keeping her own world tucked away. Her life seemed simple, predictable, and safe. But beneath the surface, a storm of creativity and longing stirred, waiting for a chance to break free. Her co-workers were friendly but distant in their understanding. They admired her work ethic and the calm way she handled stress, but none of them knew about her secret. They assumed she was like anyone else, living a life of routine and modest ambitions. She let them assume that sharing her musical talent would only complicate things, and she was content to wait for the right moment. One morning, as she carried a tray of pastries to a group of regulars, she noticed a new face in the cafe. A man in his early 40s, with a sharp suit and an air of quiet confidence, sat at a table near the window. He seemed different from the usual customers, more observant, more attentive. He watched her as she moved, not in a judgmental way, but with curiosity. She felt a flicker of unease, but also a strange sense of anticipation. There was something in his eyes, a spark that made her heart beat a little faster. The man ordered a coffee and a slice of pie, speaking with a voice that was calm and measured. She served him with her usual grace, careful not to spill a drop. As she set the cup down in front of him, he smiled and said, "You have a nice rhythm to your movements. Have you ever played the piano?" The question caught her off guard. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. Most people would have laughed it off or ignored it, but there was something genuine in his tone. She smiled politely and shook her head. "Not professionally," she replied. "Just a little at home." The words felt insufficient, like they didn't capture the hours of practice and the depth of her passion. But she said no more, and he nodded, accepting the answer. Throughout the day, the thought lingered in her mind. Why had he asked? Was it just casual curiosity? Or did he see something in her that others did not? She couldn't shake the feeling that this brief encounter might be the start of something unexpected. As she wiped down tables and refilled sugar containers, she found herself tapping out rhythms on the counter, imagining the piano beneath her fingers, the sound filling the cafe. Her shift ended, and she walked home through the quiet streets, carrying the small satisfaction of a day well done. But the encounter with the stranger lingered, planting a seed of possibility. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her music was not just a secret, where it could be seen, heard, and appreciated by others. It was a thrilling thought, one that made her heart race and her mind spin with ideas. That evening, she sat at her small keyboard, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. She placed her fingers on the keys, and as she played, the music flowed naturally, effortlessly. Each note was a story, each chord a feeling she had kept hidden for years. She played for hours, losing herself in the melodies, forgetting the world outside, the rhythm of her life, the routines, the expectations. All of it faded away as she poured herself into the music. For the first time, she realized that her talent was not just a hobby or a private joy. It was something more, something that could change how the world saw her, if only she dared to take the risk. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. What if people didn't understand? What if they laughed or dismissed her? But the fear was tempered by a stronger force, the desire to share her gift, to let it breathe and exist beyond the walls of her small apartment. She practiced late into the night, refining each piece, feeling the music come alive beneath her fingers. In the quiet, she imagined a future where she could perform in front of an audience, where her talent would no longer be a secret. She imagined the surprised looks on people's faces, the disbelief, and the admiration. It was a vision that made her heart soar and gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt before. As she finally closed her eyes, exhausted but fulfilled, she realized that this was only the beginning. The life of a simple waitress had its comforts and safety, but her heart belonged to something greater. Music was her truth, her escape, and perhaps soon, her way to a new world she had only dreamed of. She drifted off to sleep, the melodies still echoing in her mind, unaware that her life was about to take an extraordinary turn that no one could have expected. The next morning, the cafe buzzed with the usual crowd, the clinking of cups and the low hum of conversation filling the room. The waitress moved with her usual precision, taking orders and balancing trays. But her mind kept drifting back to the man who had asked about her piano skills. The question lingered, more persistent than she expected. There was something in his tone, a quiet curiosity that made her wonder if he truly believed she could play. The thought brought a mix of excitement and nervousness. As she wiped down a table, the man entered the cafe again, this time with a small, folded flyer in his hand. He approached her with a friendly smile, careful not to startle her. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said, "but I'm involved in a charity event next week. There will be music, performances, and a small audience. We were joking earlier, but I thought, maybe you might consider performing? Just one piece." Her heart skipped a beat. She had not expected this. To be invited to play in front of an audience felt surreal. She looked at him, unsure what to say. It was one thing to play in secret, another entirely to let strangers hear her music. Her hands felt clammy, and she could feel a wave of doubt rise inside her. I don't know," she said honestly. "I haven't performed in front of anyone in years." The man's smile was encouraging, not pushy. "I understand. No pressure at all. But sometimes, an unexpected opportunity can lead to something wonderful. If you'd like, you could just try it, and if it feels right, you can play. It doesn't have to be perfect." She took the flyer, staring at the neat lines of text, the details of the event, the date, the time. It seemed unreal, like a dream she had longed for but never imagined coming true. That evening, as she walked home through quiet streets, the flyer clutched in her hand, she felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. Could she really do it? Was she ready to show the world what she had kept hidden for so long? At home, she set up her small keyboard and sat down, her fingers hovering above the keys. She started to play slowly, testing her memory, easing herself back into the rhythm of the instrument. The melodies came naturally, as if they had been waiting for her to return. Each note reminded her of her childhood, of the hours she had spent practicing in secret, of the joy and freedom music had always brought her. The next few days were a blur of preparation. She practiced whenever she could, carving out time between shifts, late at night, early in the morning. She focused on a piece that she loved, something that flowed with emotion and allowed her fingers to move freely. She imagined the audience, even if she could barely picture them, and tried to feel the music as they might. With every practice session, her confidence grew a little, though the nerves never fully disappeared. She also began to imagine how people would react. Would they be surprised? Would they listen intently? Or would they dismiss her as just another performer? The uncertainty was daunting, but it also fueled her determination. She wanted to give them something real, something that would resonate, even if only for a moment. At work, she kept up her routine, serving customers with the same friendly efficiency. But beneath the surface, her mind was alive with music. She tapped out rhythms on the counter while pouring coffee, imagined chords in the background of conversations, and hummed softly as she moved between tables. Her coworkers noticed a subtle change in her demeanor, a quiet confidence, a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before. They didn't know the reason, but it was clear she carried something exciting with her. The day of the event arrived, and the cafe felt different somehow. The morning passed slowly, each moment stretching longer than usual as she imagined what was to come. She carefully went through her routine, setting her shifts, preparing orders, all while rehearsing the piece silently in her mind. By the evening, when her shift ended, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to step out of the shadows and into the light. She arrived at the event, a small hall with a modest stage, chairs arranged neatly in rows, and soft lighting casting a warm glow. Performers were setting up, tuning instruments, and exchanging greetings. She felt a flutter of nerves as she adjusted her uniform, unsure if she should stand out or blend in. She noticed the man who had invited her, giving her an encouraging nod from across the room. That simple gesture was enough to steady her heart. Backstage, she sat on a small chair, taking deep breaths, her fingers resting on her knees. She closed her eyes, imagining the music flowing through her, the audience listening, the notes carrying her story. She reminded herself that this was not about perfection. It was about expression, about sharing a part of herself that had long been hidden. The thought calmed her, even if only slightly. The first performer took the stage, playing a lively piece on the violin. The audience applauded politely, and she felt a surge of anticipation. Soon it would be her turn. She listened to the applause, counting the beats in her head, letting the rhythm guide her nerves into focus. The moments passed slowly, each second stretching, until finally, the stage manager called her name. Her heart raced as she walked to the piano. The spotlight shone softly, and the room seemed larger than she had imagined. Chairs stretched out in rows, and faces turned toward her. She swallowed hard but kept her head high. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment where her secret could finally be revealed. She sat on the piano bench, adjusted the stool to the right height, and placed her fingers lightly on the keys. The silence of the room pressed against her, both daunting and inviting. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first few notes were cautious, testing the air, feeling the sound resonate. But soon, the music took over, flowing naturally, filling the hall with emotion and warmth. Her fingers moved with grace, each note telling a story, each chord carrying a feeling she had kept inside for years. The audience leaned forward, captivated, drawn in by the unexpected talent emerging from someone they had never imagined. As she played, she felt herself becoming part of the music, not just a performer, but a vessel for the emotions she had carried silently for so long. The worries, the doubts, the fears, they all melted away, leaving only the pure joy of expression. The room seemed to breathe with her, the applause building quietly as the piece reached its peak, the audience caught in a shared moment of wonder. When the final note faded, there was a pause, a quiet stillness that lingered for a heartbeat before the audience erupted in applause. She sat back, stunned, unable to believe what had just happened. The sound of clapping, cheers, and exclamations filled the hall, washing over her in waves of disbelief and joy. She had done it. She had stepped out of the shadows, and for the first time, the world had seen the talent she had nurtured in secret. Backstage, the man who had invited her approached, smiling broadly. "I knew you could do it," he said. She laughed softly, shaking her head, still in awe of the moment. Other performers and audience members came to congratulate her, expressing surprise and admiration. She felt a warmth spreading through her, a sense of accomplishment that words could hardly capture. She had not just played music. She had shared herself, and the response had been more than she had ever dreamed. That night, as she walked home under the quiet city lights, the memory of the performance stayed with her. The nerves, the excitement, the applause, all of it was a part of her now. She realized that life as a waitress had been comfortable, familiar, but her music had opened a door to a new world, one full of possibilities she had only imagined. And for the first time, she felt ready to step fully into that world, knowing that her talent was no longer a secret, and that no one could ever expect what she was truly capable of. After the performance, life seemed to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. The cafe was the same, the tables still clattered under plates and cups, and the aroma of coffee lingered in the air. Yet for the waitress, the world felt different. Something had changed inside her. She had taken the first step out of her ordinary life, and the taste of that moment lingered, giving her a new energy she could not ignore. Customers noticed a slight change in her demeanor. She smiled more easily, walked with a subtle confidence, and carried herself with a quiet pride. Her coworkers sensed it too, though they did not know the reason. There was a light in her eyes, a spark that suggested something beyond the routines of everyday work. Yet, she remained humble, never boasting or drawing attention to herself. She preferred the quiet joy of knowing what she had achieved. The event had left a lasting impression on her. She thought about the audience, the way their eyes had followed her every movement, the way they had responded to the music. It was exhilarating, and yet it brought a new challenge. How could she continue to nurture her gift while managing the life she had always known? Her shifts at the cafe were demanding, and the thought of more performances seemed both exciting and intimidating. She found herself sneaking moments to practice whenever possible. The small keyboard at her apartment became her sanctuary again, each note reminding her of the freedom she had experienced on stage. She experimented with new pieces, allowing herself to explore melodies she had never dared to try before. The music flowed differently now. It was not just a secret indulgence but a growing expression of her true self. Her fingers moved with more confidence. Her emotions poured freely into each chord, and her mind seemed to expand with ideas she had never explored. One afternoon, a local music teacher happened to visit the cafe. He had heard about the performance through friends and social media, and he was curious to see the young woman for himself. He ordered a simple coffee and watched her as she moved gracefully among the tables. She was unaware of his presence, humming softly under her breath as she worked. After she served him, he spoke gently. "I heard about your performance. You have something special. Have you ever considered formal training?" She was taken aback. The thought had never occurred to her. Her music had always been private, learned in secret, nurtured quietly. Formal training felt intimidating, a world apart from the life she knew. Yet there was a pull, a curiosity, a sense that perhaps this was another step forward. She thanked him politely and walked away, her mind racing with possibilities. Could she balance her work, her responsibilities, and her growing musical ambitions? The idea was both thrilling and frightening. That evening, she sat by the window in her small apartment, staring out at the city lights. She picked up the keyboard and allowed her fingers to wander across the keys. The melodies were familiar, yet each time she played, they felt new, alive, and urgent. She realized that music had become more than a hobby or a secret joy. It was now a driving force in her life, guiding her decisions, shaping her thoughts, and giving her hope. Her family noticed the change too. They had always been supportive, but they had never truly understood the depth of her passion. Now, when she played, they listened with awe, sometimes silently, sometimes encouragingly. It was as if a hidden door had opened, revealing a part of her they had never fully seen. Her parents, proud and amazed, suggested she consider opportunities beyond the cafe, even if it meant venturing into unfamiliar territory. At work, the cafe remained a place of routine, but she approached it differently. Each interaction with customers was more intentional, each task a chance to carry herself with dignity and confidence. She noticed small details like the way people moved, the rhythms in conversation, and she began to see the world with a sharper awareness. Music had opened her mind in unexpected ways, making everyday life feel richer and more connected. She also started to imagine her future more vividly. She thought about performing in larger venues, sharing her talent with more people, and perhaps even recording her music. The dreams that had once seemed distant and impossible now felt attainable, given the right effort and courage. She knew there would be obstacles, that balancing work and music would be challenging, but the spark that had ignited in her during that first performance would not be extinguished. One day, while cleaning tables, she overheard a conversation among regulars discussing an upcoming local talent show. The idea of participating both excited and terrified her. She could feel the music in her chest, urging her forward, whispering that this was another opportunity to reveal her gift. She made a silent promise to herself. She would take the chance when the time came, no matter how daunting it seemed. In her moments of solitude, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From quiet childhood afternoons spent at a small piano, to long shifts in the cafe, to the electrifying experience of performing for the first time, she had grown in ways she never imagined. Music had been her companion through solitude, her refuge during long and tiring days, and now it was guiding her toward a future full of potential. Her confidence began to influence her relationships as well. Conversations with coworkers and customers became more engaging, more authentic. She shared little stories about her music, allowed herself to laugh and smile without restraint, and noticed that people responded positively. The secret she had once guarded so fiercely was no longer a burden. It was a source of strength and connection. The days blended into weeks, and each time she sat at the keyboard, she felt a deepening connection to the music and to herself. She experimented with compositions she had only imagined, allowing emotions to guide her fingers. The music became a reflection of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. Every note she played was a testament to her courage, to the choice she had made to step into the unknown. The man who had invited her to perform occasionally checked in, offering guidance and encouragement. He suggested new pieces, shared advice about technique, and most importantly, reminded her that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and perseverance were essential. She took his words to heart, incorporating them into her routine and pushing herself to grow beyond her comfort zone. Her reputation began to spread quietly. Word of her first performance and her growing skill reached friends of friends, and soon, she received invitations to play at small gatherings, local events, and private parties. Each opportunity was nerve-wracking and thrilling, a chance to step further away from her old life and into the world she had long imagined. She learned to navigate the balance between work and music with patience and determination. Early mornings and late nights were filled with practice, while her shifts at the cafe honed her discipline and focus. The combination of routine and creativity became a rhythm in her life, each element enhancing the other. She found joy in the small victories, in the progress of her practice, in the moments when an audience truly listened and responded. Through it all, she remained humble. She did not seek fame or recognition for its own sake. Her motivation was simple: to express herself through music, to connect with others, and to explore the depths of her own talent. Each performance was an act of sharing, a gift, and she approached it with sincerity and passion. One evening, after an especially moving practice session, she sat quietly, letting the final notes linger in the air. She realized how far she had come. From a quiet waitress hiding her talent to a young woman embracing her gift and sharing it with the world. The journey was not over, and challenges would continue to arise. But for the first time, she felt truly empowered, capable of shaping her own destiny. As she turned off the lights in her apartment and prepared for bed, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction. Music had transformed her life in ways she had never imagined. It had given her confidence, purpose, and the courage to pursue her dreams. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. Each note she played, each performance she gave, would carry her further, unlocking possibilities she had once only dreamed of and revealing to the world a talent that no one expected, not even herself. The day of the next big event arrived with a mix of excitement and nervousness swirling in her chest. The waitress, now more aware of her growing talent, could feel the tension in her stomach as she prepared to leave for the venue. She dressed simply but neatly, wanting to look professional without drawing unnecessary attention. The thought of performing again in front of a new audience both thrilled and terrified her. She had learned to embrace her music, but the unknown could still make her heart race. As she entered the venue, she noticed the contrast between this space and the small cafe she was used to. The hall was larger, the lights brighter, and the hum of conversation more intense. People were arriving from all directions, some familiar, some strangers, each carrying a sense of expectation. Performers were tuning instruments, adjusting their notes, and running through last-minute practice. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. She felt a moment of doubt as she observed the other performers. Their confidence and skill were evident, and she wondered if she truly belonged here. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and reminded herself of the first time she had performed, the joy she had felt, and the connection she had made with her audience. That memory grounded her, providing the strength she needed to step forward. Backstage, she found a quiet corner to practice a few final notes. The piano stood near the center of the stage, shining under the soft lights. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling the familiar rhythm and letting the music flow naturally. Each note carried a sense of calm, a reminder that she had already faced the challenge before and had succeeded. She allowed herself a brief smile, thinking about the journey that had brought her here, from the quiet cafe to this bright, bustling hall. The first performers took the stage, and she watched from behind the curtain. Their music filled the room, and the audience responded with polite applause. She noted the reactions, observing how people leaned forward, how some tapped their feet, and how others whispered in admiration. It was a reminder that music could connect people, even strangers, and she felt a renewed excitement about sharing her own gift. Finally, her turn came. The stage manager called her name, and she walked forward with steady steps, feeling the weight of anticipation in the air. The audience looked up, curious about the young woman stepping into the spotlight. She adjusted the piano bench and took her seat, placing her fingers gently on the keys. The hall fell silent, and for a brief moment, she felt the full weight of expectation pressing down on her. She began to play. The first notes were soft, testing the space, letting the music find its place in the room. Gradually, the melody grew stronger, more confident, as her fingers danced across the keys. She allowed herself to get lost in the music, forgetting the audience, the lights, and the nerves. The music became a conversation, each note a word, each chord a sentence, telling a story that only she could convey. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected talent before them. Their eyes followed her every movement, and the applause that followed each section of the piece grew louder. She could feel the energy of the room feeding into her performance, pushing her to explore more complex rhythms and richer tones. The connection between performer and audience was palpable, a silent understanding that music was more than just sound. It was emotion, shared and understood. As she played, memories of her childhood flooded her mind. She remembered the small piano at home, the hours spent practicing in secret, the joy and frustration of learning each note. She remembered the quiet determination that had driven her through long days of practice, and the satisfaction of finally mastering a piece. Those memories gave her strength, reminding her that her talent had always been a part of her, waiting for the right moment to shine. The piece reached its climax, and the hall seemed to hold its breath. Her fingers moved with precision and passion, each note resonating with the emotions she had stored for years. The audience responded instinctively, caught in the flow of the music, unable to look away. For the first time, she felt the true power of performance, the ability to touch hearts, to move people without words, to create a shared experience that transcended ordinary life. When the final note faded, there was a brief moment of silence, as if the room itself were catching its breath. Then, the applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than anything she had experienced before. People stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping away tears, others smiling with genuine admiration. She sat for a moment, overwhelmed by the response, her heart pounding with exhilaration. She had done it again, and this time the impact was even greater. Backstage, the man who had encouraged her earlier approached, his eyes shining with pride. "You were incredible," he said. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and accomplishment. Other performers and audience members came forward to congratulate her, expressing surprise and amazement at the talent hidden behind the ordinary appearance of a waitress. She felt a mixture of humility and pride, realizing that her efforts and dedication had truly made a difference. After the event, she walked through the quiet streets, reflecting on the evening. The experience had been transformative, not just because of the applause or recognition, but because it had shown her what was possible. She realized that her life as a waitress had been just one part of her identity, and that music was now a path to explore, a bridge to new opportunities and experiences. Her confidence continued to grow in the following days. She approached her work at the cafe with renewed energy, finding joy in the familiar tasks while carrying the memory of the performance with her. Customers noticed the subtle change, the way she moved with assurance, the warmth in her smile. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. It was the courage to share it, to step forward when the moment arrived, that made all the difference. She also began to think more seriously about her future. Music had become a central part of her life, and she wanted to explore ways to develop her skills further. She considered taking lessons, attending workshops, and seeking opportunities to perform in larger venues. Each thought was accompanied by both excitement and apprehension, but she knew that growth required stepping out of comfort zones and embracing new challenges. In the quiet of her apartment, she practiced diligently, experimenting with new pieces and refining her technique. She discovered new layers of expression in the music, allowing her emotions to guide her fingers and create melodies that felt authentic and personal. The piano became not just an instrument, but a companion, a mirror reflecting her growth and aspirations. Her journey was not without obstacles. Balancing work, practice, and personal life required discipline and sacrifice. There were moments of doubt and fatigue, times when she wondered if she was capable of sustaining this path. But each performance, each successful practice session, reinforced her determination. She learned to trust her instincts, to embrace mistakes as part of the learning process, and to celebrate progress, no matter how small. The community around her began to notice as well. Friends, family, and even strangers recognized her talent and encouraged her to pursue her passion further. Invitations to play at local events and gatherings increased, providing her with new experiences and exposure. Each opportunity reinforced the idea that her talent was not only real but valued, and that sharing it could inspire and move others. Through it all, she remained grounded and humble. She never forgot her beginnings, the long hours at the cafe, the secret practice sessions, and the quiet determination that had carried her this far. Those experiences shaped her character, giving her resilience, empathy, and a deep appreciation for the journey she had undertaken. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a small community event, she sat alone, reflecting on how far she had come. She realized that her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. Music had given her confidence, purpose, and a sense of connection that went beyond the routine of everyday life. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them, knowing that her talent, dedication, and courage would guide her. As she prepared for bed that night, she looked forward to the future with hope and anticipation. The experiences of the past months had shown her that life was full of unexpected opportunities, and that sometimes, stepping into the unknown could lead to extraordinary growth. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction and excitement, knowing that the path she had chosen was leading her to places she had only dreamed of, and that the music inside her would continue to shape her journey in ways she could not yet imagine. The night of the next performance was quiet at first, the hall dimly lit, waiting for the crowd to arrive. The waitress felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. She had performed before, but the feeling never got easier. Every audience was different, every hall unique, and every note had to carry the emotion she wanted to share. She adjusted her outfit, taking care to appear professional yet approachable. Her fingers brushed lightly over the piano keys, testing the sound and feeling the rhythm of the room settle into her mind. As people began to fill the seats, the murmur of conversation and the occasional laughter created a background symphony of anticipation. She observed the audience, noting the different faces, some eager, some skeptical, some simply curious. She thought of the first time she had performed and how their reactions had surprised her. Tonight, she wanted to captivate them again, to take them on a journey with her music and emotions. Backstage, the performers were warming up, sharing polite greetings, and discussing the evening's program. She found a corner to focus on her breathing, letting the nervous energy turn into readiness. The piano waited for her on stage, a silent companion, promising the connection she longed to make. She placed her hands gently on the keys, remembering each note, each melody, and the joy that came from playing them. When the time came, the stage manager called her name. She walked forward with steady steps, acknowledging the audience with a soft nod. The spotlight hit her, and the hall seemed larger than ever. Faces turned toward her, curious, waiting to see what the waitress could do. She felt the familiar surge of excitement as she sat down at the piano, her fingers poised, ready to speak through music. The first notes were soft, tentative, as if testing the waters. But soon, her confidence grew, and the music began to flow freely. Each chord, each note, carried the emotions she had kept inside for years. She lost herself in the melody, her mind focused entirely on the story she wanted to tell. The audience responded instinctively, leaning forward, eyes wide, captivated by the unexpected talent of someone they had assumed to be ordinary. As the piece progressed, the music became richer, more expressive, reflecting the journey she had taken from quiet practice sessions to public performances. She allowed herself to feel the emotions fully, letting joy, hope, and even a touch of fear influence the sound. Her fingers moved effortlessly across the keys, each note resonating with passion and authenticity. The audience was drawn in, hanging on to every chord, mesmerized by the transformation of a simple waitress into a performer who commanded attention. Her thoughts drifted to the people who had shaped her path, the family who supported her quietly, the man who had encouraged her to take the first step, the music teacher who had recognized her potential. Each memory fueled her performance, making the music even more powerful. It was as if she was not just playing for the audience but sharing a piece of herself, her journey, and the countless hours of practice and dedication that had led her to this moment. The climax of the piece was intense, demanding both technical skill and emotional depth. She felt the music rise within her, guiding her hands, her body, and her spirit. The audience responded, captivated, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes to absorb the sound fully. She could feel the energy of the room, the collective breath of the listeners, and it spurred her to give everything she had. In that moment, there was no fear, no hesitation. Only music, pure and unfiltered, connecting hearts across the hall. When the final note lingered and faded, there was a brief silence, as if the audience collectively held their breath, absorbing the impact. Then, the applause erupted, filling the hall with energy and excitement. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even whistling in admiration. The waitress sat for a moment, overwhelmed by the response, her heart racing, a mixture of disbelief, joy, and fulfillment washing over her. She had done it again, and the effect was even more profound than before. Backstage, the man who had first encouraged her approached, smiling broadly. "You were magnificent," he said. Her smile was shy but radiant, a reflection of the satisfaction and pride she felt. Other performers and audience members came forward, congratulating her, expressing amazement at the depth of her talent. She realized that her quiet life as a waitress had been only one part of her identity, and that her music now allowed her to connect with the world in ways she had never imagined. After the performance, she took a quiet walk through the city streets, reflecting on the evening. The lights sparkled, and the night was calm, a perfect contrast to the intensity of the performance. She thought about the journey she had taken, from secret practice sessions to public performances, from self-doubt to confidence. Music had given her a voice, a way to express what words could not, and a sense of belonging she had never felt before. Over the next few days, the impact of the performance became evident. People in the community began to recognize her talent, offering encouragement and opportunities to perform. Invitations came from local events, community centers, and even private gatherings. Each new chance brought excitement and nerves, but also the growing realization that her talent could take her further than she had ever imagined. Her confidence continued to grow, not just in music but in all aspects of life. She approached her work at the cafe with a renewed sense of pride, aware that she had a gift that could transcend the ordinary. Her interactions with customers and co-workers became more engaging and thoughtful, and she noticed that people responded positively to her energy. Music had changed her, giving her a sense of empowerment and connection that extended beyond the piano keys. In her private moments, she continued to explore her talent. She experimented with new pieces, compositions she had only imagined, and allowed her emotions to guide her fingers. Each session at the keyboard was a chance to discover new layers of expression, new ways to communicate her story through music. The piano had become not just an instrument, but a companion and a mirror, reflecting her growth, resilience, and the courage to embrace her dreams. She also began to think seriously about long-term possibilities. Could she pursue music more fully? Could she find opportunities to perform regularly, take lessons, and grow her skills? The idea was both exciting and intimidating. It required planning, dedication, and the willingness to take risks. But the success of her recent performances had given her the confidence to consider the possibilities, to dream bigger than she had before. Despite the excitement and opportunities, she remained humble. She never forgot the small beginnings, the hours spent practicing in secret, and the long shifts at the cafe that had taught her discipline and patience. She understood that success was a combination of talent, hard work, and courage, and she approached each performance with sincerity and respect for the music she loved. Through all of this, her life became a balance between work and music. Early mornings and late nights were filled with practice, while her shifts at the cafe reinforced her discipline and connection to the world around her. She learned to manage both, finding a rhythm that allowed her to grow without losing sight of her responsibilities. Each day brought new challenges, but also new rewards, and she embraced them with determination and hope. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a small community event, she sat alone, reflecting on how far she had come. The journey from a quiet, unnoticed waitress to a confident performer was remarkable, filled with moments of doubt, courage, and triumph. Music had given her purpose, expression, and a connection to others that she had never experienced before. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them, trusting in her talent and her resilience. As she prepared for bed that night, she felt a sense of peace and anticipation. The experiences of the past months had transformed her life, revealing opportunities and possibilities she had once only imagined. She felt gratitude for those who had encouraged her, for the moments that had tested her courage, and for the music that had guided her journey. The path ahead was uncertain, but filled with promise, and she knew that each note she played would continue to shape her future in extraordinary ways. The days after her last performance were filled with a sense of wonder and disbelief. The waitress, who had once felt invisible in her quiet routine, was now being recognized for her talent in ways she had never imagined. Invitations came from local venues, small music festivals, and even private gatherings. Each request brought excitement, but also a careful consideration of how to balance her responsibilities and the new opportunities that were unfolding. She realized that her life was changing, and she would have to embrace it fully if she wanted to grow. She spent her mornings at the cafe, serving customers with the same precision and care as before. But there was a difference now. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, and there was a spark in her eyes that drew people in. Customers noticed the subtle change, complimenting her warmth and professionalism, though few could imagine the extraordinary talent she had hidden for so long. Her coworkers, too, sensed the transformation, and while they didn't know all the details, they admired the way she seemed more alive, more engaged with life. In the evenings, she devoted herself to the piano. Each session was a mixture of practice, experimentation, and emotional exploration. She tackled pieces that challenged her technically, and she allowed herself to create her own compositions, letting her feelings guide the music. The piano became not just an instrument, but a trusted companion that reflected her growth, her struggles, and her victories. The melodies she produced carried the depth of her journey and resonated with the quiet power of someone who had discovered their true voice. As word of her performances spread, people began to approach her with encouragement and admiration. Friends of friends, community members, and even strangers expressed amazement at the way she transformed music into emotion. She received invitations to play at events that she had once considered unattainable. With each opportunity, she felt both excitement and nervousness, but she also knew that every performance was a chance to share herself, to touch hearts, and to inspire others. One evening, she was invited to perform at a charity gala. The venue was grand, with high ceilings, sparkling lights, and a crowd filled with people from various walks of life. She felt a familiar flutter of nerves as she prepared, adjusting her outfit, taking a few moments to breathe deeply, and mentally rehearsing the pieces she planned to play. The piano awaited her on stage, its polished surface reflecting the soft glow of the lights, a silent partner ready to carry her through the performance. When she stepped onto the stage, the audience turned to watch. There was curiosity in their eyes, some skepticism, but mostly anticipation. She sat down at the piano, feeling the weight of the moment, yet also the thrill of opportunity. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes were gentle, exploring the space, and gradually, the music grew, filling the hall with emotion and depth. Each chord spoke of her journey, each melody a story of perseverance, passion, and courage. The audience was captivated. Some leaned forward, their expressions awed. Others closed their eyes to fully absorb the music. There were whispers of surprise and admiration as they realized that the young waitress they had assumed to be ordinary was capable of extraordinary artistry. She allowed herself to get lost in the music, letting her emotions guide her fingers and create melodies that were at once personal and universal. The connection she felt with the listeners was profound. A silent conversation carried through sound. As the performance reached its climax, the intensity of the music drew the audience in completely. She played with both technical skill and emotional authenticity, blending precision with passion. Each note carried the essence of her experiences, the long hours of practice, the self-doubt, the quiet determination, and the joy of finally being heard. The hall seemed to hold its collective breath, fully immersed in the moment, until the final note resonated and lingered in the air. Then came the applause, thunderous and sustained. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and expressing genuine admiration. The young waitress sat for a moment, overwhelmed by the response, her heart pounding, her eyes brimming with tears of gratitude and joy. She had done more than play music. She had shared a piece of herself, and it had touched everyone in the room. The realization was both humbling and exhilarating, a confirmation of the path she had chosen and the risks she had taken. Backstage, she was greeted by organizers and attendees who offered congratulations, expressed amazement, and encouraged her to continue pursuing her passion. The man who had first encouraged her smiled warmly, his pride evident. "I knew you had it in you," he said. She returned his smile, feeling the depth of his support and the validation of her hard work. Other performers shared their respect and admiration, acknowledging the rare combination of talent, dedication, and courage that she had displayed. Over the following weeks, she continued to receive invitations to perform. Each new opportunity brought excitement and a chance to grow, to explore new pieces, and to reach broader audiences. She balanced her cafe work with her music carefully, maintaining her routine while carving out time for practice, reflection, and preparation. The discipline she had developed over the years proved invaluable, allowing her to thrive in both realms. Her family and friends watched her transformation with pride and amazement. They had supported her quietly, never fully grasping the depth of her talent, and now they could see the result. Her music had become more than a personal pursuit. It was a bridge connecting her to others, a way to inspire and move people with something she loved deeply. She felt gratitude for their support, knowing that her journey was made stronger by the encouragement of those who cared for her. The waitress began to consider her long-term goals more seriously. She thought about further training, more performances, and perhaps even opportunities to record her music or teach others. The idea of a future shaped by her passion felt both exhilarating and possible. She realized that her life, once defined by routine and the constraints of a cafe, had expanded into a world full of potential, where her talent could flourish and impact the lives of others. In her private moments, she continued to explore and experiment with music. She composed new pieces, blending emotions and experiences into melodies that reflected her journey. Each practice session became a discovery, a way to express herself more fully, to connect with the world through sound. The piano had become an extension of her identity, a tool through which she could communicate without words, sharing her story and inspiring others in ways she had never imagined. The recognition she received did not change her humility. She remained grounded, aware of her beginnings and the long path that had led her to this point. She knew that talent alone was not enough, and she continued to dedicate herself to improvement, practice, and learning. Her passion for music was matched by her determination to grow and give her best in every performance. One evening, after a performance at a community gala, she sat quietly in the empty hall, reflecting on her journey. The applause, the recognition, the opportunities. All of it was incredible, yet she knew that the true reward was the ability to express herself and connect with others through music. She realized that her life had transformed, not just because of talent, but because of courage, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. As she prepared to leave the hall and walk through the quiet city streets, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment and anticipation. Music had become her life, her passion, and her bridge to a world she had once only dreamed of. Each note she played carried the story of her journey, from quiet, unnoticed beginnings to recognition, growth, and the discovery of her true potential. She knew that the road ahead would bring new challenges, but she felt ready, confident in her ability to navigate whatever came her way. The future was full of promise, a canvas waiting for her to shape it with her talent, determination, and heart. She knew that no one would ever expect what a simple waitress could accomplish with dedication and courage. The realization filled her with pride, humility, and a quiet joy. She had found her voice, her path, and her place in the world, and it was only the beginning of a journey that promised even greater heights and experiences yet to come.